Here are my major takeaways from reading Black Against Empire by Joshua Bloom and Waldo E. Martin. Number one, community empowerment. And I've talked about this in other videos. I associate and have always associated the Black Panther Party with what they did in terms of building up communities, from the free breakfast to the clinics that they provided to busing people to prisons. When I think of the Black Panther Party, I don't just think of fancy, beautiful hats. And they look so fly. Like, I know that's an old term, but they look great. Being dressed up, carrying weapons. I think about the impact that they had in community empowerment. It was one of the first times where we had groups coming together to build up our communities that weren't religious. I do like the idea of doing good things and it not have an agenda of saving someone's soul, but just because it's what needs to be done. When I think of the Black Panther Party, my very first thought is usually community empowerment, and that's something that they highlight in the book, which I really, really love. Something else that was a huge takeaway from the book was the government surveillance. I like that they pointed out in the book because it's something that we all knew but could not prove. And this is a nonfiction book, so I like that they did the research and it was very clear that they were in fact being surveilled by the FBI, and then the death of Fred Hampton and how that was organized and how he was drugged and he was murdered in bed with his next, while he lay next to his pregnant girlfriend. How our government has not really had an issue with intervening, even with lethal force. I like that book highlights that and points it out, and it puts it out there for anybody to read and learn about, because it's not, to the Black community, that's not new knowledge, but it is something that is constantly glossed over. When you hear Black Panthers, you just militants, terrorists. Please don't ever call the Black Panther Party a terrorist to me, like ever, because all I'm gonna say is, who did they kill? And I'm gonna wait, because we should not label people whose entire goal is self-defense and who don't murder people terrorist. I like that they talked about the government surveillance and that's impact on the Black Panther Party. And my third thing was the global connections. Those of you, I am currently teaching in China. So I did not know that the Black Panther Party came here and that they were celebrated and accepted and that there was a parade. Because when I think of my experience in China, a lot of it is based off of the fact that I'm Black, and a lot of being Black runs counter to a lot of Chinese cultural customs. And I mean that in terms of how we communicate. Black individuals tend to be direct communicators, and Chinese culture is very much indirect in terms of saving face. It's more about protecting reputations than it is about anything else. I had no idea that the Black Panther Party had come to China, or that Black people had been in China during that time, and that other countries too, and they'd set up like their own little mini government sort of things in other places. And I thought that was really neat. It was a really interesting thing to learn. And finally, for me, the biggest lessons I took away from the book weren't just like the racism and the fighting the police, because that's honestly been something that has been a factor of Black history for decades, is fighting slave catchers, fighting overseers, fighting the police. It's just constant being over policed, and all we're just trying to exist. And now with the rise of people who call the police on us for doing basic things, it's the idea that policing is a weapon and not what it should be for, which is to protect people. Instead, it's weaponized. One thing I've loved about this book, or I love about this book, and I read this book several years ago, or last year. It was one of the books I read last year, and it was one of the highlights last year. And this is definitely one of the ones that was really impactful, which is why I went on the calendar for this year, because it was something I wanted everybody to be able to be like, seriously, I'm highlighting this book. It needs to be read. It's impactful. It teaches you more about the Black Panther Party than you would have known. Even things I knew about Fred Hampton, because I was born in Chicago and I know about Fred Hampton. But when you think about Huey Newton, that's well before my time. And Fred Hampton's ideology and Huey Newton's ideology weren't the same. And so the growth of the Panther Party too is really interesting. The ideology changes, the growth of it nationally, then the growth of it globally, and then what took it down, and how it was partly, and by partly, wholly, the FBI infiltrating it with spies, and how the FBI tore down this organization whose whole goal was Black empowerment and protection. And the scary reality that that is something that our government found threatening. Just saying, that's messed up. Anyway, please go ahead and check out the book. I will drop a link to it on Amazon. It's seriously a great book. Everyone should read it. Black Against Empire by Joshua Bloom and Waldo E. Martin. And if you have not already downloaded your own calendar for Black History Month, go ahead and do that too. Thank you. Remember to subscribe. Bye-bye.